You posed three really interesting questions. What were the most important decisions at BRICS last week? Is there anything in it for Africa? And what does the BRICS decision or outcome mean for us, if we can count as ordinary South Africans?
There were so many discussions that took place. I take two out of that. BRICS summit took place at a time of geopolitical tensions. So for South Africa, having hosted a successful BRICS summit with a lot of pressure from the West, I think it's very commendable. The expansion of BRICS for me is one of the most important ones. If you look at the groupings of countries that are there, it's a little bit more representative. You have the Middle East now represented as part of this block of emerging markets. You have a bolstering of South America with the addition of Argentina together with Brazil. And then you have Egypt and Ethiopia increasing Africa's representation. But even within that, you have a North African country, you have an East African country, in addition to a Southern African country. So it's representative in Africa. It's also increasing a representativeness of Africa in the BRICS. So that, for me, it's quite important. It gives more clout to BRICS Plus, if we're to call them that way, at global forums to represent the ambitions and policy choices of emerging markets. One of those policy choices have to do with the pace of decarbonization, or how do we address climate change. There has been a call from emerging markets in particular to say the pace that is being imposed on emerging markets is too quick. They still have a lot of social issues, and in some ways, to decarbonize quickly before building the resilience with green technology can actually result in worse outcomes, including some oil countries in the BRICS might actually give clout to that call to say, yes, we commit to decarbonization. It comes with a lot of risks that we have to deal with, and we are less placed to deal with because we don't have the funding. So that still remains an issue to be addressed. It's just the pace that needs to be addressed. And then the second one is the NDB, the New Development Bank, or the BRICS Bank, that has said they are going to increase issuance of local currency debt. It can be helpful for the member countries. It reduces the cost of debt. The NDB is better rated compared to the individual countries. So that can reduce the cost of debt for financing infrastructure. But also, if you are going to lend to finance South African infrastructure and you are using rands, you borrow in rands, it means currency risk is also reduced. And some of the conditionalities that come with the World Bank and the IMF, the typical Bretton Woods institutions, have been detrimental for most of African countries. Hopefully, lending that will come from the New Development Bank will come with better conditions. By no means will it replace funding from the West. We are not there yet, still very far. It just means there is another alternative that is also going to contribute. Those, for me, are important. What does it mean for ordinary folks? I think it's an important question for all of us. In the short term, potentially very little, because international agreements and forums does not replace local responsibilities. So policymakers, South African businesses still need to address the issues that we have been dealing with, irrespective of the fact that this BRICS grouping is increasing and its influence is also becoming more global. We still need to deal with our own issues here at home. And part of those, in line with what have been said by fellow panelists, is businesses need to hold government accountable, to Fundi's point. But I would want to make this point. They say in India, the economy prevails in spite of the government. And that speaks of the leadership that comes from business. Yes, government is not doing what's supposed to do in many respects, but businesses do not sit back and say that this is not our problem. They address the issues. And where it matters for business, we have seen examples of business stepping up. But unfortunately, it's almost like, hopefully I'm not going to offend anyone here, business almost behaves like an overweight person who doesn't go to gym until they're just about to suffer a heart attack. Then, they respond aggressively. We are seeing coordination between government and business now. We saw Business for SA in COVID, and just before President Zuma resigned or was recalled, we saw all of that. Where was business in the last 10 years when corruption was running rampant in the state, when the state was being decapacitated? Business was quiet because it didn't hit the bottom line at the time. So what I'm trying to say is we need business to be always holding government accountable, not in times of crisis alone. It has to be a continuous holding of government accountable, but also doing right from a business perspective. The issue of ESG is coming to the forefront because there are certain practices that businesses have done that have harmed their environment, which we are now dealing with. I'm sure we know the issues of zamazamas, unclosed mine shafts where profits have been extracted, which are now becoming problems. There was no rehabilitations of those. So I'm just giving an example, but there are so many of these cases where business is found wanting. So I'm just trying to balance the conversation to say it's not just government alone. There are also issues that needs to be addressed from a business perspective, because on the other side of corruption in government, there's a private sector player.